we are in January 2006 when I started teaching. Each of these puzzle pieces has a tool or a strategy that you could use for best practices in teaching. None of these are new. However, when I started teaching, I had no idea how to put them all together to become the teacher I am today. The first 10 years of my career were a roller coaster. I started out getting small contracts that led into larger contracts, and then I thought once I became a continuing teacher, my career would start to stabilize. That clearly was not the case. In a time of decreasing enrollment, I would get laid off year after year, and I constantly had a new grade or a new school or both for all 10 years straight. I became the teacher that just wanted to go through the motions, not wanting to put down roots because I was constantly having to uproot myself year after year. I was never able to develop who I was as a teacher on my own. Each new school and new year, I had new growth plans and motion statements for each of those schools to learn. I couldn't really develop who I was. I had to jump on board with what the new school's focus was on. My teaching beliefs and actions were primarily based on how I was taught as a student. I was definitely a behaviorist type of teacher that talked too much, and direct teaching was my comfort zone. I assumed that all students needed to do was listen to my lessons and they would magically fully understand the concepts. I would talk, give them a worksheet for them to show their learning. I cringe at myself as I look back on these days. Now I have removed all those puzzle pieces and I'm starting to organize them in my brain as I transform who I am as a teacher. The first big moment in transforming me as a teacher was becoming a mother myself. After having Everly, I pictured how teachers would be to her, and I emulated that in how I interacted with my students in my class. Parents send their kids to school to learn, but even more so, they want their children to be valued, cared for, and treated with compassion by their teacher. That is how I view my role as a teacher now, to be someone my students can always count on, and to love them as if they are my own, even the ones that it takes a little bit more effort to find pieces to love. Added into my heart of being an effective teacher puzzle, I have put in mom, caring, student engagement, and new curriculum so far. My philosophy of how learning takes place began to take shape. I began to focus on student engagement. It came at the perfect moment too, when the introduction to the new curriculum came out. It left so much room to put my own touch on what and how my students learn. I came to the realization that when my students are engaged, expressive outcomes happen. Important aspects of how I approached student engagement were student-centered activities, hands-on learning, co-constructed criteria, clear learning goals, asking questions, descriptive feedback, peer and self-assessments, formative assessment, self-regulation, and setting goals to achieve. I felt that all of these areas were equally important in student success in the classroom. I began to take all of this into account when I planned my year, units, and daily lessons. As a teacher, I believed in being a lifelong learner. My career stabilized when I finally found my home at Huban Park Elementary. This is where I began to set down my roots. With the help of a close-knit group of colleagues, that is when I decided to sign up to take this course. And boy, am I glad I did. Over the past 2 years, I have found myself as a teacher. It hasn't always been easy, as I found it to be very difficult to be a reflective teacher in the early days. Focusing on the program capacities gave me purpose and focus on how I can improve myself across all areas of teaching. I have learned so much in all different areas, but I can narrow them all into 3 overarching umbrellas, my learning statements: personalized learning, formative assessment, and the integration of the core competencies. My first main area of learning, personalized learning, was where I really developed my student-centered learning in my classroom. Students are in the driver's seat, and I am no longer front-loading my unit planning. The unit plan evolves as the unit goes on based on my students' previous knowledge and their curiosities and wonders. A big focus of this personalized learning was putting up the wonder wall in my classroom. The students can tell me what they are wanting to learn, and I can develop lessons and learning activities that help investigate these questions. Another big area of personalized learning is the addition of soft starts into my daily routine in my classroom. This helps to create a positive learning environment where the kids are in control of how they get their bodies ready to learn. Giving my students choice and ownership has changed my teaching. It is now student-centered. My second learning statement is formative assessment. Assessing for learning has taken the forefront in my teaching. I no longer base my assessments on their final unit performances. It's all about the process throughout the whole unit, assessing as we go to guide my teaching. Having individual conferences with my students about their reading, writing, and math has definitely helped me give my students descriptive feedback and develop individual goals with them in order for them to move their learning forward. Formative assessment. Now this leads me to the last learning statement, core competencies, and how I learned how to integrate it into my daily practice with the use of picture books. I always felt that I was never doing the competencies properly. I was doing snapshot self-assessments with my students as an afterthought, essentially checking the core competency self-assessment box. My teaching of these competencies was more indirect, and I never got to the meaning behind each of the competencies and why they were important to us as learners. I have found that directly teaching to the competencies using picture books gives my students more clear understanding of the real-world connections. I noticed a big change in the understanding of the concepts from my students. The more picture books we read together, the more their understanding blossomed. Their conversations and discussions became meaningful, and I saw a transference in their learning to their own social interactions. By using the competency language as a common language, it improved the understanding. These three main learning statements are the core to my learning over the past 2 years. The learning is important to me because it is deepening the learning for my students and their engagement level is high. I am feeling like I am providing a more enjoyable experience for both my students and myself. This learning is significant for the students I teach because it gives them the control. They get to be the bosses and guide the learning. My students are also part of the assessment process. They can take ownership of what they have learned and where they still need to go. They are able to take that information home to tell their parents what they are working towards in grade 2 so far. I continue on this learning journey that is transforming me as a teacher and as a learner myself. I am constantly evaluating and reevaluating what I am doing in my classroom and seeing where the value of it lies. If it doesn't benefit me or my students, I stop doing it. I have started to really focus my lessons and teaching with a deeper focus on the competencies and less on the content. The core of my teaching is now the connections and relationships I have with my students, as well as helping to promote meaningful learning opportunities that promote transference into real-life future contexts. Looking through the program capacities, I am able to see my growth in the journey of the past 2 years in this course. As an informed practitioner, I am learning how to take more risks, provide more inquiry opportunities for my students, and do more reflection in my reflective journal. Through this, I'm able to see what is working, what isn't working, and where I want to go next, based on the latest research. As an ethical and caring leader, I have put more focus on the social emotional needs of my students. A big part of that is the self-regulation strategies that I use within my classroom. Soft starts, inner explorer, body breaks, all play a key role in getting my students prepared for the day and getting their brains set for the best learning they can do. And it creates a positive learning environment for them as well. Being an educational leader has been the most difficult capacity for me. I constantly have the feeling that I am less than other teachers and I don't have as great of ideas. This is an area that I've really started to try to improve myself on. I know that I have good ideas. I know that I am a great teacher. I just need to believe in myself a little bit more. I want to take a more direct approach at being a leader with my colleagues and in the district. And I feel that a big area that I could focus on would be to help implement soft starts in other classrooms in my school and other schools in the district. as I feel that I have done a lot of research on soft starts and I have a lot of information to give. As a flexible learner and practitioner, I have learned how to change. If things aren't working well, I change it. I don't get stuck in a rut. I am flexible, and I'm learning to release control with my students, and that has been the biggest change for me in my daily practice. As a strategic and responsive teacher, I am learning all the different methods and strategies that I can use to teach the diverse classrooms that we have these days. My classroom is more individualized based on the needs of all of my students, achieving the best that they can do. There are so many people that have helped me through this process over the past 2 years. First and foremost is my family. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to take this course at all. On top of that, I have my Team Sparkle. You know who you are, ladies. These are the women that I was able to go after having a bad day into their classroom, and they would pep me up, talk me through it, give me ideas, and ask how it went the next day. They have given me so much insight, encouragement, and love throughout the last 2 years. Thank you, ladies. You rock. And I also have a very special colleague that works next door to me who's also done her master's in this area, and she was a mentor for me along the way. As I look back at everything I've accomplished over the past 2 years, I am amazed at how far I have come. Did I think I would learn something? Of course. Did I think that I would become the teacher I am now? Not a chance. I couldn't believe all the insightful assignments and reflections I have done over 2 short years. I have become a teacher that actually has a philosophy and vision of how I want to teach. The most important thing that I am coming away with from this course is how connections and relationships are the most important aspect in being an effective teacher. Those connections and relationships are the basis of creating a learning environment where students feel safe, encouraged, loved, and important. I learned to slow down, listen, talk less, and reflect. These key learnings have also helped me in being a better mom, wife, daughter, and auntie. I am not just a better teacher, I'm a better person now from having these past 2 years. I believe in giving kids the control while still holding some of the control for my type A personality. My classroom is now student-centered, student choice-driven. I believe in formative assessment to help my students be the ones to create their own individual goals and have ownership in their own learning adventure. I am sad that this course is over, but I am happy to have some time to explore everything that I have learned and more. I want to work toward being more of a leader in our district. I am passionate about soft starts and their ability to help give students the perfect way to start the day. I want to bring all my experiences and maybe even create a Pro D opportunity to teach other teachers how to implement them into their daily routines. I am also hoping to go towards learning more about integrating Indigenous ways of learning into my daily learning activities. I want to weave it in just as I now do with the core competencies. I am going to enjoy a much needed break now and not go for my master's quite yet. I am leaning towards doing it within the next 5 years. We will see what happens. But if that happens, I do hope that I will have a team of supporters around me then that I did this time. Wow, what a ride.